name is Jan Hill, and I'm a member of the SAI Advisory Board. And I want to welcome you to the panel I'm hosting for the Near-Death Experiencers panel. And we have some wonderful speakers with some very intriguing stories that I know you're going to love. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be amazed. We'll have a short 15-minute Q&A after everyone has had a chance to speak. So please keep your questions for last, and we'll go ahead and get started. Our first speaker is Stephen Paul Chong. Stephen is coming to us from down under, far north Australia. We're so happy to have you, Stephen. And in 2019, Stephen had a profound awakening after he fell from a ladder and broke his neck. His lengthy healing journey led to a new understanding of life. Stephen presents The Laws of Heaven and Earth, a quest for buried treasure. Thank you, Stephen.
Jan, thank you very much. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think I tell you anything spectacular in saying that this is a time of profound spiritual awakening. The experiences are manifestly augmented in this time. So let me share with you, if you wouldn't mind, some slides. To me, ladies and gentlemen, this is a time, it's like akin to a hurricane. It's so much going on, both in a global and external context, but also, I suspect, in a personal one as well. And for me, this is so profound because what it does is draw us to be present with the divine, to be, yes, there's a lot spinning around us, but we stay in the eye of the hurricane. It is like Dr. Kaysen just so eloquently stated, that we need to be still and know that I am God. Just by way of background, let me tell you about this experience some 5 years ago. As Jan mentioned, I fell from a ladder 15 feet and broke my neck. Now here we stand and all is well. But throughout that transformative experience, and I suspect from what Dr. Casson stated, that I'm an outlier. But what happened was presented then afterwards was the great gift of writing a book. I was taken on a journey through the heavenly realms where I was shown wonders to behold. Now, very briefly, I was shown the healing arena where souls go to, the illnesses and sicknesses taken away from sins imposed by others. There was the nether regions, the lower levels of the heavenly realms where souls are relieved of addictions. I was shown a most beautiful school for children where young babes in arms, if they leave the earth plane early, they are so beautifully nurtured by their Heavenly Father. There was the abode of reunion where we go when we sleep to reunite with loving kin. And there was the Great Hall of Akashic Records. And there was also a spirit guide school, among many other things. But what happened subsequent to the writing of the book, some 3 months after, I awoke one morning with the voices in my head telling me, read, and I've read this book 100 times, written it and read it. And what I did was read it again and found buried within the text of the book were what I've called the laws of heaven and earth. Now I found 15 of them and they are there, and I do not expect you to be able to read them on the slide there. But these laws have made such a profound difference to my life and I offer them as a gift. Now, they are like a chest of buried treasure. They are full of knowledge and awareness. And what this awareness does is make this life and the eternal next a far better place. They build a bridge between this life and the eternal next. And what they also do is they provide support and counsel and understanding in this time of profound spiritual awakening. Now, I must tell you that in my case, many things have happened subsequent to finding these things. But I now have no fear of the passing process. I know basically what is going to happen. So it has taken away the fear of death. These laws have provided comfort and hope in grief and loss. Some 2 years now, I lost my beautiful mother. And yes, there is grief for her loss of her presence, but I now know where she's gone. I know where she is, and I know where to find her in this heart. And she is more powerful, never absent from one's presence. So it has provided great comfort in grief. And ultimately, for me, what these laws have done is they have recognised one's grand purpose to fulfill. We each have a grand purpose to fulfill, and herein lies the journey. Now, we don't know, I do not have time to go through the whole 15, but what I'm going to do is go through about 3 or 4 of them. And I'll give you my interpretation of these laws. But what I do is I commend you to, I will show you where you can download these laws later. But I commend that you look at them, examine them, talk them through with your loving kin and friends and circles. And here is the first one. Law number 1, fear not, you are never without the love of the Father. Now let's think about this in this time of there's so much turmoil and chaos going on in a worldly sense and perhaps in a personal sense. We are never absent the love of the Father, the universal spirit, the loving mother, whatever we would like to call it, is never absent our side. So we need not fear. We can call on this universal spirit whenever we need. But what this law for me also does profoundly is it helps us recognize our self-worth. We are each and all a wonderful human being full of great potential. This is why we were put on God's earth, and we should let no one tell us differently. We have a grand purpose to fulfill. And to be sure, in this time of great transition, there is only one set of footprints in the sand, and they are not ours. This light is never absent our side, only sometimes our side. But we know is with this love we need not fear. Law number 4, we are all one in spirit. What you have done to another, you do to yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, what I was shown in this journey in the writing of the book was that when we enter the heavenly realms, we are robed in colours that reflect, let me call it the judgment of the mist. What we have done to another, we do to ourselves. And that designates the pathway upon which we then follow, which is uniquely ours. But to build a bridge between this life and the next, what I believe this law tells us is that it takes commitment and trust. For without commitment, we cannot learn to love, take care of others more than ourselves. To when we look at another person, to see the divinity in their eyes. This takes commitment. And it also takes trust. For without trust, we cannot hear the divine calling. We know that that divine spirit is there for us all the time. We need to call on them. Our spirit guides are there always. That love is never absent our side. But we need to trust that the answers will be there, the trust that the guidance will be provided. When we ask questions of the divine, what do I do? How do I proceed? Where do I go? We then open that aperture, that quiet space in the middle of the storm, and we trust that the answer will come. And what I know is that we just need to ask. The divine is there ever present. But trusting in this higher power becomes not a thinking process. It's not in fact, we need to shut down the monkey mind. It becomes a listening process. We listen for the answer and trust that it will be there. Law number 7, in your life review, all shall be revealed. No thought or action insignificant. All remembered to record. Now, I mentioned, ladies and gentlemen, when and what I saw and was shown in the heavenly realms is that we pass through the let's call them the mist of judgment, and our road forward is reflected in the robes that we wear. And so let's build a bridge between that understanding and this life. And remember that in our life review, we are held responsible for our actions. There is no escape, no obfuscation, no place to hide. All is remembered to record. But bringing that back to our life now, it, it tells us about our intentions. Every action in life, our every thought, word, and deed is linked or motivated by an intention. So, what do we choose? Do we choose hatred, malice, spite and anger, revenge? Or do we choose compassion, love, empathy, and understanding? And of course, the latter of these opens up the revelations in our life review as it will transpire. And what we know is that there is no thought or action that is insignificant. There is no place to hide. Law number 12, ladies and gentlemen, to know that you are sacred is not to see new things in you, but to see yourself as you really are. God, why am I here? Why have you cast these stones upon me? Why have you abandoned me? I speak for myself, but I'm certain it is the same for each of us, that we have all confronted this dark night of the soul. What I know also is that we are each a divine teardrop from the eye of the Father. And what this law to me leads to is necessity in our daily life to exercise persistence and resilience, to confront without fear the challenges that present themselves, to get up when we've been knocked down, because we have, and to never give up. We each have a grand purpose to fulfill. And what is essential, in my opinion, is that we learn from our mistakes. My goodness, ladies and gentlemen, in my 68 years, I've tripped over my size 10s any number of times. But those mistakes do not define me. They lead a pathway to an unfolding of a greater purpose. And to be sure, in particularly in this time of great turmoil, that we need to renew our connection on a daily basis, to spend time in listening mode. And that this might be in terms of a meditation. Uh, I'm a weird sort of guy. I love to do, I like to do the ironing, but that metronomic task leads us to uh, shutting the monkey mind down and tuning in. And I must tell you that the writing of the book, now The Afterlife, was like a tuning a radio dial to the right frequency. I saw and heard. I heard the dialogue. I saw the colours beyond the rainbow, and I did my best to describe. But what this means, in my opinion, in particularly now in this time of great turmoil, is we need to renew this connection to the higher beings, the universal light, to the Heavenly Father, whatever we wish to name it.
Wow. Thank you so much, Stephen. You have
Not
such a
not quite
way.
finished.
Oh, I'm
Uh,
sorry.
That's all right. I think I'm on the second last slide now, Jen. It's all right. Um, so there, as I say, there were 15 laws of heaven and earth, and I will give you the links where you can find that in a minute. But let's go back to the treasure chest and let's open it up again. And what
1 minute.
we've been told through the heavenly book, the Bible, is that seek and ye shall find. And when we open this treasure chest, what we find is not answers to questions, rather more questions, but profound questions. And I think I've got to end now, don't I, Jan? I'm talking too much. But questions like, what would love do next? What do I need to do to come closer to the light? What lessons am I meant to learn? And finally, what Osho tells us is the seed has never known the flower. We do not know what lies await when the flower blossoms. So, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Uh, there on the screen, you will see my website, and you can go on there and you can freely download the laws of heaven and earth. And I commend so much that you do so. They are profound and they provide a bridge between this life and the very eternal next. I'll be thanking you.
Thank you so much. That was so heartwarming. And Stephen, you have such a way with words, and I'm so happy you're a prolific writer and author because you can save these things for generations to come who will be reading your works. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jan. Great pleasure.
All right, our next panelist is Kelly Curry. Kelly is a master mural artist who in 1998 had a near-death experience that led her to a brand new life as she came to understand that love is all that matters. Kelly presents This Will Follow My Soul. Kelly?
My name is Kelly Curry, and this is my first time giving a presentation, so please bear with me as I go through this, but it's to give you an idea of what occurred with me and how that changed my life. So I've been writing a book. It's not quite done yet, but it will be done this fall. It's called This Will Follow My Soul, and it's about the the event and how it happened. So how it started was I was in a car accident in 1984. And from that accident, I had had a lot of surgeries over the years, 41 of them. And I had been living in pain for a very long time. So during the time of raising my children and in my youth, there was just a constant daily amount of pain from different surgeries and different things that had happened that were because of the accident. And so about 14 years after the initial accident, I was at work one day and I had picked up something at work, and the damage that was in my spine was already bad and had been bad over the years, getting worse and worse. But during this particular time, it took the rest of the discs that were bad and they crumbled. And when they crumbled, it put me in like a state of paralyzation. And I ended up in the hospital like that. And I was very lucky that a doctor had come from another hospital recently, and he had designed a radical surgery for people who had the kind of damage that I had. And so he had offered to do the surgery to try to repair the area and also give me back feeling in my legs. And so I said, well, what the heck? I'm not walking now. You might as well, you might as well try it, because the worst thing can happen is that the same thing that is happening now is happening. And so I go into the surgery, and I'm prepared for surgery. And I've been in for so many surgeries that I had gotten used to kind of how everything worked, as far as like the timing of everything, or, like when you come out of surgery, you hear people telling you, hey, Kelly, wake up, or they're shaking you a little bit, or calling your name and that kind of thing. And on this particular surgery, I was awake and aware, thinking that I had come out of the surgery, but they weren't yelling my name and they weren't shaking me or anything. And I was really relieved about that. And so in that moment, I start kind of doing like a check of my body, like asking, hey, I wonder if the surgery went well. I wonder if I'm going to be able to walk and that kind of thing. And suddenly I hear the nurses talking about the tattoos on my legs. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's unusual. That's not really something that they normally do. And when that happened, I started to kind of tune into what they were talking about. And so they're talking about the tattoos. I have a lot of them on my legs, but they were talking about them as they kind of like move up towards my torso. And in that moment, I felt like a little bit angry that they were talking about me like that. And I went to go say something. And when I went to go speak, this is when I realized that I don't have a voice. I can't talk. And so I start to kind of panic a little bit, because I don't know exactly what's going on. I don't know if I'm going into surgery now or if I was coming out of surgery, but I start thinking, oh, I'm going into surgery. And so at about that moment, I start to hear the surgical instruments hit the metal plate that's in there. And I know that normally I go out after that, but I started counting backwards, like 10, 9, 8. And normally by the time I got to 4, I was out. But I got to 1 and I wasn't out. And then I really started to panic. And so I wanted to talk. I wanted to say something, but I couldn't say anything. Now I could feel the air in the room. I knew who was walking around. I could smell things, but I could not speak and I could not open my eyes. And so I start, saying, hey, head to the neck to the shoulder, shoulder to the hand. I was trying to move my fingers so that I would know that they knew that I was awake. And that's when I felt the doctor put the knife on my stomach. Like I had felt him swab it first, and it was wet and cold. And this is when I'm really panicking. This is when I'm really trying to connect to my fingers, move my fingers, blink my eyes, move my toes, something. And in the next moment, I felt him insert the knife into my stomach. And when he did that, I could feel that with all the pain. It was extremely painful. And he sliced all the way down, like from my sternum down to my pelvic bone. And when he got to the last muscle on the part of the muscle on my abdomen, it snapped back. And the snap was such a jolt and such an incredible pain that in that next moment, boom, I was out of my body. And I found myself floating above myself, watching the scene that was going on below me. Now, I saw them moving around. I could see everything in the operating room, but that's not what really had my attention. What really had my attention was the fact that I was painless for the first time in 14 years. For the first time in 14 years, I did not feel the kind of pain that I had been living with. Not only was I living with physical pain, I was living with emotional pain. I was living with spiritual pain. I didn't know it at the time that it was spiritual pain. I learned that afterwards, but my life was completely out of whack. And so when I was floating there, I was thinking, oh my gosh, I'm painless. There's no pain in me. And then the next thought that was in my head was, oh my Lord, I've died. And so in that momentary instant of that realization that this might be the end for me and that I might be dead, there was actually a feeling of not only relief, but happiness within myself, because I thought, oh, it's over with. There's not going to be any more pain. There's none of this craziness that's going on. I didn't like the life I was living. And I thought, okay, that's it. I want to go. I'm ready to go. And so I heard like a voice say to me, it's time for you to go back. You need to go back. And I was like, no, I'm not interested in going back. No, I'm done. I don't want to go back. I don't feel any pain right now. I don't want to be there. I want to be here. This feels good. And the voice was a little more insistent, but you have things to do. And I really didn't want to hear anything. I just was kind of like somewhat arguing, but not really, but saying, I'm not going back, I'm not going back, I'm not going back. And this beautiful energy started to envelope me. This beautiful, loving energy, this, no pain. I felt full of love. And the more that I felt the love, the more that I didn't want to go anywhere. And so in the next moment, the voice says to me, well, we're going to show you something, and we think that this will help you. We think that this will help give you some understanding of what's going on. And so in the next moment, I was surrounded by this green fog, like fog, like a cloud, but it was all the way around me. And I was just kind of floating in it, but I was completely loved. Like every atom in my body felt love. Everything about me was just radiating this like unbelievable, powerful love and acceptance and forgiveness and like every beautiful, positive word you can think. I felt like I was the emanation of that. And as I was in that space, and the more that I felt that health and that joy and that love, I was really convinced that I didn't want to go. And then I felt more presences around me. I could feel them in a way like internally. And it was these presences that started to kind of come out of the fog towards me. And as they came towards me and were filling me with more and more of this love, they collectively were speaking to me and saying, we have something that we would like to show you so that you will understand why your life is the way it is. And so the next thing that happened was that a stack of spider webs appeared before me, kind of like one on top of the other. And in each spider web, there was a light. And what they were showing me is that the lights were words that we speak. And so every web was connected to another web, to another web, to another web. And when they were connected to those webs, when you spoke a word on that web, like that light would kind of travel out to that next web. And then you might see that light on that web travel out to another web. And when I spoke something beautiful, like, hey, you look wonderful today, or I love you, or that looks really nice on you, or any heartfelt, honest, good thing coming out of your mouth, any good word, that light would travel to that next web. And then you could see that maybe you impacted that human and with that word, and then they might speak another good word. And so that word, that light, that beautiful light might travel to others' webs. Consequently, I saw that if I spoke some not so nice words like I hate you, or you look awful, or you're a terrible person, or anything that had that vibration behind it with that word, then that light also traveled to another web. It went to that person because that person heard what you were saying. And they may take that energy and repeat that also. And that would continue to go on. And I could see that there was way more webs that looked like that in my life than looked like the positive ones. And in that moment, I had a realization. And that realization was that I was living the life I was living because I was creating it with the words that I was speaking to others. That all these things that I was saying were coming right back to me. Those words were going out, but those words were coming in me. And I wasn't spending the time that was necessary to think about what I was saying or contemplate how much energy that carried with it. And so I knew in that moment, that epiphany was that I could go home and that I could change things. I knew I could change things, especially where my family was concerned, especially where my children were concerned. And I wanted to take that time that I knew that I could have now, and I wanted to return so that I could change that, so that I could not only help my family, help myself, but also help others, to give them this message that there was something that they could start today, even if it's little by little. When that experience took place completely, when I came out of it, no one believed me. Um, I woke up screaming, I was awake, I was awake, I was awake. Everyone thought I was crazy. They told me that it was the drugs I was under. They told me I didn't feel anything. I told them the words that the doctors were speaking. They sent me psychologists who tried to poo-poo the whole thing. And so I ended up just kind of keeping this all to myself. But even though I wasn't talking to anybody about like what occurred, it was starting to change me from within. My words had started to change. My desires had started to change. The things I was doing in my life, I no longer found any joy in doing, the not so good things. And so I lost everything within that year and I let it go. I let it go because I knew that my old ways needed to go for the new ways to come in. Shortly after, about a year into my trying to understand what happened to me, I read a lot of spiritual books at the time. At the time, this is in '98, there weren't a ton of them out there, but I picked up the Bible and I picked up a few of the religious texts that were out there so that I could kind of go through them and see if anyone had had my experience and what do we do with this? What do we do when you've been downloaded? There was more than the spider webs. There was more to it. It was like a bigger picture of life had been given to me, a very large picture. And gifts in me were growing during that year. Different types of aspects of myself were growing. And I wasn't happy doing the things I'd been doing. So I not only lost my home and my marriage, but I left a job that I had been at for 22 years. And I set out to find something new that would connect to myself and this new soul that was born within me. And in that year, I met an artist. I met this older man who was painting murals, and I was watching what he was doing. And it's a beautiful story, that one, the happenstance of how I meet this artist and the impact he has on my life. But after about a year and a half of studying with him, I started painting murals on my own. And I have now been out there crisscrossing the country, and I have been painting murals for 25 years. I have over 650 of them out there. I have a website called kellycurrymurals.com, and Follow My Soul is attached to that. The books that I am now writing are about this whole entire journey from the moment that this has happened to me to all of the different spiritual lessons I've learned along the path, the things I've gone through, good, bad, ugly, and beautiful, and how I was able to create these works of art that have also fostered my spiritual understandings. And so this is one of my murals here behind me down in Florida. And I hope that that you will be able to check them out, maybe. I'd like to get back to the page to see everybody on, there we go. So I'm in my studio here and talking to everyone today about it, but the books that I'm working on are about this journey that I've been on and the people that I've met along the way that have helped me with my spiritual understandings, and they're growing day by day. I don't think there's ever going to be an end to that. So I'm very happy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me today.
Wow, what a brave soul you are. And it's astounding to think when you look back, we all wonder, we think, oh, something was bad or something was good. We make judgments. But in this case, had the surgery gone normally, your life might have been, status quo. This would have never happened. So kudos to you for surviving a painful experience. Thank you very much. That was an amazing story. Whew.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have Stephen LaRussa. Stephen is a certified master spiritual coach who had a telepathically shared near-death experience with his spouse. Very unusual, and I can't wait to hear about it. Stephen will share his understanding of this experience and the self-imposed barriers that we put in our own path. Stephen?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. Let me bring up my slide here. So I am going to, during my presentation, I am going to speak about, here we go, my spiritual awakening journey, the purpose behind my NDE, the details of my NDE, and how my NDE realigned me with my purpose. So as I get into it, all NDEs are unique. The universe, I believe, tailor makes NDEs to fit what that person may need for their greater good, for their soul's evolution. The purpose of most NDEs is to spark a spiritual awakening, elevate consciousness, or to provide clarity on path and purpose. My NDE was a little different. It wasn't to spark a spiritual awakening. I had undergone a 2-year spiritual awakening and an intense dark night of the soul, which made my path and purpose clear during that time. My NDE basically served a different purpose entirely. So my awakening began through a number of hardships: losing my job, separating with my wife, my son going through various hardships and difficulties, and losing my life savings in a few bad real estate deals. So all of these events sparked my spiritual awakening. I began to question everything, who I was, the meaning of it all. Is the purpose of life to constantly chase money, success, and stature, yet to never feel fulfilled? So I endured an intense battle between my false self and who I thought I was and my true spiritual identity, referred to as the dark night of the soul. I fought hard to hold on to my old identity, which only intensifies the experience and the suffering. So it got so intense for me that I literally wanted to die. I wasn't suicidal. I just didn't want to be here anymore and endure this because I had no idea what was going on. I didn't know if I was going crazy, losing my mind, having a mental breakdown, going through a midlife crisis. I had no idea. So I went and turned back to my roots, which was the Christian church. But yet they had no understanding or knowledge, or they couldn't provide me of any answers of what I was going through. So, after I came out of my awakening, I was inspired to become a spiritual coach. I studied quantum physics, past life regression, spiritual principles and theories. I received my certification to be a master spiritual coach. I was compelled to inspire and help those that crave a true and authentic connection, to help them deal with and identify issues that block and hinder their spiritual growth and connection, to have people look at things, situations, and events and people through a spiritual lens, not through worldly logic and the ego self. So, when it was time to step into my calling, I reverted back. I reverted back to worldly perspectives, self-doubt, and began to worry about judgment and other people's approval. So this all led to my NDE. So my NDE happened relatively, it wasn't that long ago. It was basically in October of 2024. My wife and I were in Lake Tahoe, Nevada. We were relaxing in our rooms. It was about 9 p.m. We were engaged in conversation. And I was overwhelmed by an intense, sharp chest pain on my left side. My body began to tingle. I had numbness, and I had trouble breathing. At this point, I turned to her and said, "I'm having a heart attack. I'm dying." Now, this was the last time that we spoke out loud until near the end of the NDE. So at this time, she heard a voice. She heard the voice of God tell her to get into position. So without hesitation, she laid on the bed and took my hand. So I was confused. I was like, shouldn't she be calling 911? I didn't understand it. I was unaware that God had given her calm and instruction during this time. So, and also calling 911 obviously would have interfered with this event that we were destined to go through together. So my spirit began being pulled from my body. This is when the telepathic communication began. She said to me telepathically, "We're transcending." So I tried to make sense of the comment, and I didn't understand it. I took it as, we're transcending, so she's dying also. And she told me that she could actually feel my pain. Although it wasn't as severe as what I was dealing with, she felt my pain during this experience. I was surrounded by darkness, and then I was in outer space. I was amongst the stars, traveling through space. And like Dr. Kaysen said earlier, part of my consciousness was still here, and part of my consciousness was in the spirit realm at the same time. I was able to decipher what was going on in each realm. This is when God spoke to me for the first time. And he said to me, "You've wasted enough time." And instantly, I understood that this was a result of running from my calling. And I began to pray. I began to beg God for another chance, to give me another chance to fulfill my mission. Despite my prayers, my spirit was continually being pulled away from my body, and the pain was intensifying. In the distance, I saw a radiant white light. I was slowly approaching. As I was slipping further away and growing weaker, I remembered in my studies of NDEs, I was well aware of the light. I heard stories about the light, and I was well aware of it. But I told myself, okay, I guess this is it. So I told myself to stop fighting, stop resisting, and give in to death. This is when I heard my wife's voice, clear and telepathically, say, "Steve, don't give up. Fight, fight, fight. Keep fighting." I responded, "Okay, I will." This gave me a second wind. I began praying again desperately and pleading for another chance. I'm unsure of how long this went on. When you go through a situation like this, there's no concept of time. Time is irrelevant. Time doesn't exist in the spirit realm. So our prayers continued. I could hear her praying for me. I can hear her thoughts. Now, this is when I heard God's voice for the second time. He said to me, he said, "All this information and knowledge I've shown you, and this is what you're doing with it." And it was a question. And to tell you that I was disappointed in myself is an understatement. Because I've been through this spiritual awakening, the dark night of the soul, in many synchronicities and messages and signs from the universe. So I knew what I was supposed to be doing. So at this point, I knew that God wanted to bring to my attention that my limited perspective and fear was keeping me from my purpose. So my wife actually said to me telepathically that she could feel me dying. She could feel my soul weakening, basically. So she continued to urge me to fight. We were speaking to each other. I could hear her thoughts. She told me that she too was traveling through space and amongst the stars. And I could sense that she was there with me also. So she heard God's voice twice during our experience. Once when she was told to get into position. And the second time, God said to her, "And why should I leave you here?" And she answered with one word, "Jordan," which is our son. So as I drifted closer to the light and felt death approaching, the prayers and promises to step into my calling continued to go unanswered. I called for Jesus. Nothing was working. So at this time, in desperation, at death's door, I telepathically said to my wife, "Wanda, help me." At this time, this is when she sat up in the bed and began to speak. Now, this is out loud now. She began to speak in light language or tongues. So as I heard this didn't surprise me because I had heard her speak in tongues on a couple of other occasions. But I could barely hear her because I was so consumed with my situation, and I was basically nearly gone. I was on death's door. The final time I heard God's voice is when he said to me, Stephen, be quiet and listen to your wife. This is when I had a calm wash over me. I was able to look at her and I was able to focus with some clarity. I was brought back into some clarity at this time. She started speaking in a distinct African language. She shifted from one African language to another, speaking and chanting fluently. She spoke in 3 different African languages during this event. Then she transitioned from those languages in the chanting and the praying into an Indian language. She was speaking in Indian language, and she was chanting, and I assume praying. I don't know what she was saying because I don't speak those languages, but she was speaking them fluently. I could hear the words. I was in absolute awe. I didn't even believe what I was hearing while I was hearing it, and it was just otherworldly, and God, she was opened up by God, by the Spirit. So in that moment is when I fully returned to my body. So basically her interceding brought me back. That's when I realized that I was told to be quiet so that I could be witness to her speaking in these other languages. I feel like God wanted me to hear this because I want you to be clear that this is real and that this is happening. He wanted to give me confirmation. So the purpose of my NDE wasn't to spark a spiritual awakening or shift in consciousness. Although my spiritual sense, my third eye, was tingling and throbbing for 2 weeks after this, and I received a lot of divine downloads after this. The purpose was to relieve the self-doubt, the limited thinking, the fear, and to bring me back to realize that you have been called and this is your mission. And God allowed this to happen to me as if, I'm pretty stubborn and pretty hard-headed. Well, not anymore. The spiritual awakening and the dark night of the soul wasn't enough, I guess, for me. I still had those mental constructs and fear of judgment and doubts in my ability. I kind of lovingly and playfully refer to this event as a spiritual spanking from God, but and I definitely needed it. But I want to be clear: there was no judgment from God. I never felt condemned. I never felt threatened. There was no sense of do this or else or anything like that. It was reinforcement of my mission, a reminder that I'm supported, guided, and capable. And however, the choice was still mine, whether to go into my mission and fulfill my mission or not. We still all have free will. So, divine support is available for all of us. So we must release limited beliefs, worldly perceptions, to be able to interpret and receive this guidance correctly. My mission is to raise the light and the vibration, and to remind people that they are loved and supported enough to help them overcome fear, mental constructs, and dogma to reclaim their true power and their divine connection to Source. So a lot of people ask me, how were you able to talk about this so soon? Because a lot of people hold on to their NDE for years trying to digest it, trying to make sense of it, trying to understand it. I think what helped me obviously digest it and understand it better is the fact that I had already went through a dark night of the soul and a spiritual awakening and many signs and synchronicities from the universe. So it was easier for me to deal with, and knowing exactly what the purpose was, what the reason for it. So in closing, I want to leave everybody with this. Let me bring up my slide here. Surrender to the awakening process. Resistance creates suffering. Trust your spiritual journey. Embrace the dark night of the soul. This isn't a setback, it's a sacred step towards transformation. evolve beyond limited fears and thoughts. Low vibrational fear blocks connection from the universe. Shift from worldly identity to spiritual perspectives. Shifting from worldly and spiritual perspective is key to connection. You are guided, purposeful, and never alone. Your path is divine, and support is always with you. So in closing, I'd just like to say that I appreciate this opportunity. I thank you for allowing me to share this journey. And if any of this resonates with any of you, please feel free to contact me. My name of my company is Spiritual Alignment. You could reach me at spiritualalignmentsl.com. I thank you all for your time.
Wow. Thank you so much, Stephen. That's an incredible experience. I've never heard anything like that. And your partner was so instrumental in the entire journey. It
Yes.
seems almost as if you have many lifetimes together. The thing
Yes.
about the languages, that was really unique. I love
Yes.
it. Amazing.
Yes.
Well, we are glad you're still here with us
Thank you.
doing coaching. I know people are
Yes.
benefiting from your words of wisdom. Amazing.
Thank you.
Okay, our last speaker today is Donna Rebadow. Donna is a mystic, acupuncturist, and host of Exploring Consciousness podcast, among many, many other things. Her near-death experience started her exploration of consciousness and changed her forever. Donna presents My NDE and What I Learned About Choices. Donna?
Hello, everybody. First of all, I want to thank Janet and mostly Dr. Yvonne Cason and all of SAI for this opportunity. You guys have been sitting now for quite a while. Just take a deep breath, you know. So I am going to talk a little bit about choices. So kind of to weave through what other people have said, Stephen talked about in Law 7 about choices. So I'm going to talk about choices. Kelly talked about Kelly's Web, and it's really the consequences of your choices. I'm going to talk about that. And then Stephen, how each one is unique. So even though I'm last, it's weaving through what the other three have said. I died by drowning. I met the creator of the universe. I was asked to return and deliver a message about the power of choice and free will. And so how I died was a boating accident. And on July 17, 1998, I drowned on Bear Lake in the Adirondacks in New York with my family. Because of my drowning, my voice isn't so great, so I apologize for that. But I'm going to tell you about a remarkable series of physically impossible things that happened to let you know God really is with us all the time. I want you to know a little bit about what death is like. But I'm telling you about my experience. And like Stephen had said, I call it a designer death. So God so loves us that he creates these near-death experiences. Everyone's a little different because we're all different. There's 8.5 billion people on the planet. If a stranger came to Earth and said, well, I don't believe in life because 8.5 different experiences, it can't possibly be life. That's what we say about death. There's 8.5 billion of us now. We're probably going to have 8.5 different possibilities of death. So I'm going to tell you what the creator of the universe is like for me, what it was like getting a hug, having to make a choice, and my mission. So I'm going to stop sharing for a minute. And here I am. So drowning. So we were out having fun. My family we're just doing lake stuff. And we were on a inflatable lake toy, my sister and I. And it's a tow rope, like a ski rope, but we weren't skiing. And we were going around the lake, and one of the physically impossible things was the boat was taking on water. And my brother-in-law would wrench that boat tight so no water should be there. So we're out in the middle. We had stopped, and he yelled back at us, "Get off the boat, the boat is sinking." So I'm in the front of the pontoon and my sister's in the back, and I watched where she threw the tow rope. Now it's a nylon rope that's not supposed to, it's supposed to float at all times. So I got into the water, I had my life jacket on, and I looked down, and the tow rope was down below and now wrapped around my leg above the knee. And I thought, so I'm thinking to myself, this can't be happening. It's supposed to be floating. Now the bullet got in the sight line between my brother-in-law and ourselves, so he didn't know what was going on. So he turned his back to us, started the engine, and I looked down on it, and I thought to myself, oh no, this is really gonna hurt. And he takes off, and the rope strangles my leg to the bone, and I'm being dragged underwater. At which point I thought, well, with all this education, I can't figure out how to get out of this. MacGyver could. Remember MacGyver TV? He could always get out of this. I can't. And so how are they going to do the funeral? They're going to do New York or Arizona. So I'm being drugged, and I go, now I know how I'm going to die. And I'm swallowing all this water. And the next thing I know, I pop out of my body. So you guys, when you ask about does death hurt, sometimes our angels come and take us before that event, but they let me have that feeling of that tow rope strangling my leg. And I was like, thanks, guys. When I popped out, it's like going through saran wrap. I immediately knew the difference between time and eternity. So when all of us say there was no time there absolutely isn't. But when I say that, I'm going to talk to you as if there was time, because I don't know how else to explain things to you. So I'm going to skip some parts, but I'm going up towards God, and I'm so excited. I'm going to see the creator of the universe, and I'm being shot through with love. Like Kelly said, the love that's there. We cannot tell you about this love. All we can say, it's the most, I felt so safe and loved, and every cell in my body was like, I kind of leaned into the creator of the universe. Now, you notice my background is the Aurora Borealis, because that's how God presented himself to me. So when people say this was just a product of your brain and you're going to see what you expect to see, I grew up Catholic. Why didn't I see Jesus, Mary, and Joseph? Why didn't I see, in my Eastern religions? Why didn't I see, all the people that I studied? I didn't. I saw the Aurora Borealis, and I was like, oh. So God did not present as a gender. He presented, I'm saying he for the sake of argument, this beautiful light energy and vibration that was so full of love. And I leaned into him, and as if we were the only two in the universe, this designer death. It was like I was leaning in and getting hugged. And I kind of looked over and I saw this line, and I knew over there meant dead. I was dead with the possibility of going back. But over there, I was going, if I go over there, I'm dead. So I'm kind of leaning in. We're having this great experience. And telepathy is not like it is here. It's like at the same time in immediate knowledge. So you don't hear a voice, you don't hear a language. It's like your own thought, but it's not. And God said to me, well, Donna, what would you like to do here? So I do active listening with God. I go, so God, is what I hear you saying, do you want to know if I want to live or if I want to die? And this big electrical smile, like the whole universe lit up with electricity, like, oh, there's my Donna. I made you. Yeah. We have a good connection, don't we? It's like, yeah. And I said something, you guys, I wasn't expecting this. I said to God, I said, well, God, since you made me, I give the choice to you. Boom, silence. And I knew I'd done something extremely, not bad, just extreme. It was extreme. And all of a sudden, this knowledge kept coming in about choice and free will and the power of choice. And I gave away my choice. Now I know what surrender is. Surrender is you give away your choice, or your choice is taken from you, and you don't know what's going to happen next. So I'm getting all this information, and I'm kind of hanging out waiting. Remember, there's no time. So in my waiting, I didn't know if it was 3 minutes or 3 million years of just waiting. And then I felt unhinged and falling back to earth. And as I'm falling back, honestly, I heard God say, and everybody loves this part of the story, good answer. So I'm back. Like, what? Snap back into my dead body. I was like, what is this? How am I going to get out of this? How am I going to get the rope out? At the same time, my brother-in-law felt a hand on his shoulder. And he looked back and he saw that the bullet was doing something funny, and he turned off the engine. And I felt human hands under my arms lifting me. I thought it might have been my sister. Of course, she was back in the middle of the lake. And I got to the surface and there's nobody there. The rope comes undone, which was physically impossible. I asked the physicist at my college. I was a teacher for 30 years. And they said, no, it's impossible for that rope to come off. I'm getting rid of all this lake water. I looked down at my leg and all I saw was my thigh and my calf. And it was a strangulation. The rope strangled my leg to the bone. And I thought it was amputated. So I grabbed my calf because I thought, if I kick it off, I twitch and I kick it off, at least I can bring it into the emergency room and they could reattach it. So anyways, I lived and I came back to tell, my mission was to tell people about choice. And one of the downloads, like Stephen says, you get downloads all the time. And the veil between this or between here and there is like, no, I'm every night when I meditate, boom, I'm back there and talking to God, the angels, my spirit guides, give them a recap on the day, how you doing? So give me these downloads and they want me to start the course in choices because the depth and breadth of choices is so large. I can't do it much on a podcast, but I'm going to go back to share and tell you what I learned. Like the three of them said, consciousness continues and it expands. You have different dimensions, like Dr. Kaysen has said, that I discovered the deepest love I have ever experienced is so extraordinary. I never wanted to leave. As I gave the choice to God, and it was like, I did not want to go back. And I feel like, well, he threw me back, like fishing, go back, you got things to do. Let's see, there we go. The importance of choices, every moment, that consciousness continue, but your choice, like Stephen was saying, this bridge that you're forming, every choice you make affects you, your family, the friends, and the world, but to take the good choices in love with you. And how do you start it? By awareness. And I'm going to show you in a minute. And Janet, you're going to have to tell me if I have any time left. I knew I was kind of getting cut off there. The depth and breadth of your thinking. But as you make choices and realize, oh, maybe that wasn't such a good choice, you continuously recalibrate with no shame, blame, or guilt, because that's not what was on the other side. But I do want to talk about the fundamental attribution error. If nothing else, you take from this about how. So my students always ask, how do you make good choices? How do you do this? I said, well, fundamental attribution error, think about your homework. Everyone here, your homework is for tomorrow. I want you to see how many times you made the fundamental attribution error. And that is when you see someone and you're making judgments about them. Do you put first, like my personality, like do you love my talk? Is that because of my personality? Or do you think I'm one of those ego NDEers that come back and think I know everything? That you attributed that to my personality instead of my situation. And the situation is, no matter that I taught for 30 years as a teacher, I'm still nervous. And sometimes I say things or I come across as maybe intense, but I'm really nervous. So I'm attributing Donna's, how she comes across as to her personality instead of the situation of being nervous. My student was late to class all the time, and I attributed it to his personality. He was lazy or rebellious, or why was he always late to class? And then I found out, I said, tell me about your situation. He had to take 3 buses to get to school, and if anything broke down along the way, he was going to be late. That's the fundamental attribution error. I attributed to his personality instead of the situation he was in. So sometimes that could be our choice, and then how to make choices. Know that our choices are wants, needs, desires, our belief systems and ways of thinking. And I do, if you go to my website, exploreconsciousness.com, I have a whole PowerPoint of choices for the beginner that will go into this. And your choices are also the quality of research when you have time to do research on how you choose or think. On my website, it's like the types of choices we have are like a quick choice, putting people into categories like read Blink by Malcolm Gladwell. Or, for example, my NDE, quick choice. Hey, Donna, what do you want to do here? I had to make a quick choice. I didn't get a lot of research. Wait a minute, God, can you wait while I quick figure this out? or surprise choice. So actually, my NDE was both quick and surprise. Conscious choices, rational. I make choices about my career, car, house, diplomatic, research-based, or subconscious. Things I don't know. I have this in the subliminal, subconscious part of me that is driving my choice and I don't realize it. But your actual choice may be a combination of quick, surprise, conscious, and subconscious. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. Anyways, okay. There's so much more to it. It's not just a sound bite. I hope you enjoyed that, that you learned something from it. Thanks, you guys.
That was wonderful. And there must be some reason why you mentioned that so many people are taken out ahead of time. There has to be a reason why you missed the angel bus when they said, get out now. But it sounds like when I was reading your bio, all that you've explored, tarot mediumship, I mean, all kinds of things, the Monroe Institute, remote viewing. It's really opened up your life and your perspective, and we have all enjoyed hearing about it. Thank you very much. Thank you, panelists. We appreciate it so, so very much. We do have a few more minutes for question and answers. I've seen them come by in the chat, but I know that some have already been answered. So forgive me if I ask someone twice, or you have already answered the question. But Stephen, can I start with you? Stephen Chong. Um, I love your book, The Afterlife, the name, The Afterlife, Now You Know. And that's just so much the way life is. We're supposed to learn, we're supposed to know more and more, and each step takes us more and more. So I just wondered, what is your next growth pattern? What are you pursuing now to know more about?
Jan, it's a very profound question. And it's interesting. I've actually tried to write again, but I cannot. I have been unable to replicate the voices that I heard in the writing of the afterlife. When it was downloaded, when it came through to me, it was and again it was like tuning a radio dial. I heard and saw the things, but it was Old English. If you read the book, the language is old Victorian. And honestly, I've written some short stories and stuff afterwards, but I cannot replicate the voice. So the interesting thing is that to me, that was a confirmation of because we all have these self-doubts and think, oh, well, I made this up, or I was on drugs or something, which I'm not. But it is a confirmation of the gift that was presented to me. But it's more than that. It's the benefits that we make it work for us. We learn the laws and we live them. It becomes part of our DNA to live this on a daily basis. So to specifically answer your question, what I now know and what I do daily and as often as I can is to be present with the divine. If I learn nothing else between now and my point of departure, is to spend every moment in deep connection with that divine which is ever present. Now,
My goodness.
whatever that leads to, whatever manifests as consequence of that, well, I'm open to that because I have no fear of the consequences. So
Sounding.
now we stay present and we move forward.
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe you're not supposed to go back to writing. You have to you're going backwards. Pick the next best thing.
Yes, we shall see, Jen. So we're open to all possibilities, to be
That's right.
sure.
Okay, Kelly, next. You had talked in your bio about bringing beauty and meaning to everything that you do. And your artwork, again, this is so many of you have created things that will just live on, and that's so inspiring. So, what new frontiers are you endeavoring to pursue now, Kelly?
So after spending 25 years climbing scaffolding on these large buildings and doing these large artworks, I'm thinking about this next phase of my life. And this is a relatively new thing for me to actually get a chance to talk about my NDE. It actually happened through one of the murals I was working on, where I met somebody who informed me that there was an entire world full of people who were interested in the story. I literally knew nothing about that before that moment. She surprised me. She invited me to speak in Syracuse, New York, in front of 100 people. And when I saw the reaction from everyone, to tell the long version of everything, an hour and a half long speech, talking about the different aspects of what you go through, it touched a lot of people. And I thought, oh my Lord, I think this is the new path for this part of my life. I'll continue to do my art in my studio and that kind of stuff. But now I'm working on the books and I'd like to do more. I'd like to find out how I can be more in service to deliver some more of the understandings that have been given to me to share with people who I know are looking for them now. So it's time to be out there and be in service. I think those of us who've had these experiences, we grow every day a little bit stronger about being in front of others or being with others and finding the language that we need to communicate. And there needs to be as many different communicators as possible for the different people who hear differently. So
Right.
there's enough room for everyone.
Exactly. And it's such a nice step to take because unlike your murals, which impacts one viewer at a time, delving into the web side of things, you're going to be reaching so many more people. So I just think that's so cool. This whole panel, it's just so cool. The mission that y'all are doing. Okay, Stephen, how about you? You have had a dark night of the soul that was life-changing and have gone beyond it. And what do you think your next steps are? And how did you break through that? And after that, I still want to know that. How did you break through that dark night of the soul? And what's your next step?
Well, as far as how I broke through the dark night of the soul, the main thing for everyone when they're going through their spiritual transformation, a spiritual awakening, if it's severe, like the dark night of the soul, it's important to understand that you have to release. You have to release control. A lot of people don't want to let go of the old. When the universe is trying to elevate you, when you're trying to transcend to a higher level spiritually, you need to let go of what no longer serves you. And you have to trust the process. A lot of people, when they go through these spiritual transformations, they want to hold on to their old self, to their old life, to what they are used to doing. And you have to understand people have a fear of letting go. And they keep themselves trapped in this box. And I tell people that you have to be more excited about what's to come and what God, the universe, is bringing you instead of mourning what you're losing. Because when you evolve spiritually, a lot of the things that you used to do, places, people, situations, sometimes even family or friends, are going to be pulled away from you because they no longer align with your new vibration. So you have to learn to embrace the process. So for me, I finally realized that I need to stop fighting this and I need to release it to the universe. And once you release that suffering, you release the intensity, and you go along with the flow of the universe. So what's next for me? One of the downloads I got real quick that I was told when I went through my NDE is that I would be traveling the world speaking. And it's funny because about 3 weeks ago, I was invited to the New Life Expo in New York City in November, and I was invited to the 11th annual Spirituality and Psychology um, conference in Bangkok, Thailand.
Oh my
So,
goodness.
this is confirmation. And another thing, also
Yeah.
I'll be teaching a spirituality class. I live here in Reno, Nevada, that I'll be teaching in the fall. So
My
I
goodness.
say all this to not impress anybody. I say it to impress upon you that the universe has a plan for all of us. And as long as you go along with the flow, you're open to receive it, and you're willing to let go and let the universe take away what's necessary to elevate you to a higher level.
There you go. Classes and international talks. And very briefly, I'm sorry we're running out of time. I'm going into our break. but I want to ask Donna the same question. Donna, after your experiences, what do you think your next step in life is going to be?
Well, I'm doing a podcast. I'm a musician. I do jewelry, and I'm writing a book. I just finished a book, Wednesdays with Sadie, the Miracle Dog, about my life with training a seeing eye dog and our work with children at a hospital. And then I'm writing about my NDE. And yeah.
Wow. Well, I can't wait to hear more about it next year. I'd like to hear from all of you again. Thank you so much. I've run us over a little bit, but this was such a wonderful panel. I can't tell you how much I appreciate all of your words of wisdom